So I was recently on Twitter scrolling through mindlessly as I usually do, and I stumbled upon a series of tweets that I found intriguing, and they involved Elon Musk and the boys from Thailand who are trapped in the cave. And I know that everybody's probably given their opinion on this already, but thought I'd just throw my 2 cents in there. So the tweet that I stumbled upon that caught my attention was this tweet by a guy named Aaron, and he said, "You are literally a billionaire, literally. It is not ironic in any way. You weren't called a billionaire until you were ... a billionaire. If you think it's a negative label, maybe it's because it means that you're hoarding money and resources from the rest of the world. Rainbow." And this was in response to Elon Musk replying to the BBC saying, "Ironically, the billionaire label, when used by the media, is almost always meant to devalue and denigrate the subject. I wasn't called that until my companies got to a certain size, but reality is that I still do the same science and engineering as before, just the scales change." So Elon tweeted this in response to BBC, and this guy tweeted this as a response to Elon, and then Elon responded to this guy, and he said, "No, it means I created jobs for 50,000 people directly, and through parts and suppliers and supporting professions, approximately 250,000 people indirectly, thus supporting 500,000 families. What have you done?" So I thought this was this caught my eye as I was scrolling through Twitter, because just the levels of self-righteousness coming from this tweet, I was a little taken aback by. Basically, the argument that Aaron is making is that Elon deserves the negative label, or Elon deserves to be labeled billionaire, and for that label to be used negatively against him because he's hoarding money and resources from the rest of the world, as if he's some Hogwarts goblin who is just gathering all the galleons and hoarding them in the Gringotts Bank. So, this criticism is basically, you're a billionaire, therefore you must be hoarding resources from the rest of the world to the detriment of everyone else. Basically, the stereotypical someone living an extravagant lifestyle at the expense of a lot of other people is basically the argument that Aaron is making. And Elon pretty directly addresses this claim that being a billionaire is a bad thing by saying that he creates jobs directly and indirectly through his business. And if Aaron is saying that Elon is a bad person because of being a billionaire, and Elon is saying, well, here's all the things that I've done for this many people, what have you done? He's basically just calling out Aaron for, Aaron's trying to say that Elon is a bad person, probably, and Elon is saying, no, I'm a good person, maybe you're the bad person. That's basically what I gathered from this conversation. And I was a little bit curious what prompted Aaron to say this. And it was in response to Elon responding to the BBC, where he said, "Ironically, the billionaire label, when used by the media, is almost always meant to devalue and denigrate the subject." Ironic because billionaire is supposed to signify value, but Elon is basically saying that the way that the media tends to bring that term up is so that it devalues the person who's been labeled a billionaire. He says, "I wasn't called that until my companies got to a certain size, but the reality is I still do the same in science engineering as before, just the scale has changed." So Elon's saying, like, he's still a scientist, he's still an engineer, and just because he's a billionaire, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's lost touch with those aspects or those skills. And so I was sort of wondering, okay, why did Elon say this about the BBC? So the original tweet that Elon was responding to, where he was claiming that the billionaire label is used in a negative way to label people, there was this BBC News tweeted out, Elon Musk's offer not practical for cave mission, Thai rescue chief says. And then there's a link to an article. So the BBC makes it, makes it very visible with their Twitter account that, hey, there's this person who's the Thai rescue chief, who sounds like someone who's in charge of the rescue of the boys in Thailand who are trapped in the cave. That's what it sounds like. They're basically, so that person who seems to have authority over the situation says that Elon's offer is not practical for a cave mission. And Elon's offer is basically developing the submarine that could possibly be used to ferry people through the cave system if the waters started to rise due to the intense rain that they can get in Thailand. So if we look at this news article, something it's interesting to me. It's interesting. So the tweet that Elon responded to, that was published by the BBC, where the focus of that tweet was Elon's solution to the cave problem. The problem of getting the Thai boys out of the cave was impractical. That's basically the focus of that tweet. But that tweet links to an article that basically chronicles the whole rescue effort of the Thai boys. And so it's a little bit misleading, in my opinion, it's a little bit misleading for the BBC to tweet that Elon's proposed solution to this problem was impractical and had that be the focus of the tweet and then link to an article that basically explains the whole situation from start to finish. That seems a little odd to me. So if we try and figure out what Elon is really responding to, I think it's this this part of the chronicle where it says Musk rebuts rescue official. So there's a section here that talks about basically there's some guy who's rescue operations chief, Narongsak. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he basically says it doesn't fit with our mission to go into the cave. But Elon is saying that his proposal, his diving machine basically, it was encouraged by Richard Stanton, who's one of the divers to discover the boys, and you would think somebody like that would have a finger on the pulse of the problem because he's closest to it. And Elon basically showed a correspondence between him and this Richard Stanton guy. And the email chain basically shows that the people who are directly involved in the rescue effort of the Thai boys were encouraging Elon to keep developing this capsule. They're referring to it as a capsule in the series of emails, just in case they need a backup plan and they can't get the Thai boys out before it starts flooding more seriously in the cave system. So, I mean, if we look at this, there's an email from Richard Stanton, who is one of the divers who discovered the buoys, who's saying, "We're worried about the small slab. Please keep working on the capsule details." And Elon is replying saying, "Sounds good, we'll continue." So here's some guy close to the problem who's working on the effort to get the Thai boys out of the cave and save them. And he's saying to Elon, "Hey, this capsule thing that you're working on, this diving submarine, whatever you want to call it, keep working on it. It might be useful." So Elon is telling this guy, "Hey, we'll continue work on this. Parts are being assembled, uh, and we'll undergo testing in the water in a few hours. We'll send pics and videos. However, we don't want to put it on a plane if you think there are important changes." So basically, he's basically saying we want to keep developing this thing where we can make changes easily before we put it on the plane and try and use it in this rescue mission. He says operating principles, same as spacecraft. The Stanton guy says it's absolutely worth continuing with the development of the system in a timely manner as feasible. If the rain holds out, it may well be used. So there's sort of this sense that if it rains really hard and the cave system starts flooding, that this capsule that Elon is working on might actually come in pretty useful. And so Elon replies to this saying, "Understandable. Right now, I have one of the best teams working on the situation." And he very explicitly calls, the cool part in my opinion, is that Elon replies to this Richard Stanton guy, who's a part of the rescue effort, and he says, "If it isn't needed or won't help, that would be great to know. Otherwise, it would be very helpful to have as much design direction as possible." So here, basically, Elon is proving that he's open to the idea that maybe his solution isn't going to be useful for the rescue operation. But there's a guy saying, "Hey, you should probably keep working on this just in case, we don't get all the people out in time before the rains hit." So this basically rebuts the argument that I've seen a lot of people making that the solution that Elon's proposing didn't have any value, or it was just a publicity stunt. It seems silly to me, especially seeing this correspondence between Elon and Richard, that it seems silly to me to assume that Elon just wants to do this for publicity if in the very correspondence that he had with the people closest to the rescue effort, if in that very correspondence he was asking them if what he was doing was worth it and necessary. And the people who were close to the rescue effort said, "Yes, please keep doing what you're doing. It might come in handy." So, these arguments that what Elon was doing wasn't valuable, or that he was doing it just for publicity, don't make any sense to me. There's another part of this BBC article that chronicles the whole rescue effort of the Thai boys. And there's a section here titled, "Why was Elon Musk at the cave?" Why was he there? We've explained it here. So if you go to that link, they're basically, when you ask why is someone at the site of a rescue effort, you're basically asking what are their intentions. So this article that the BBC has basically, I think, is trying to explore the question of what is motivating Elon to help in the Thai cave rescue mission. So there was a couple different solutions that Elon was just sort of like spitballing, and apparently those got shot down. One of the solutions was a submarine, which was the solution that was endorsed by this Richard Stanton guy. And basically, there's a part in this article that says the billionaire has form with making eye-catching humanitarian acts. So that is a very interesting statement because it's the way it's phrased. The billionaire has form with making eye-catching humanitarian acts. And it almost sounds, it sort of plants this seed of an idea that Elon is doing this basically to catch the eyeballs of people and basically signal how much of a humanitarian he is. And it sort of insinuates that it's not out of the goodness of his heart, but rather because it's good for his business, which probably is good for his business at the same time. But when you're trying to judge the intentions of other human beings, you should probably be a little bit more charitable than assuming that they're motivated only by capitalism and money and greed. So that's not the claim of this article, that Elon is only motivated by money. But it's insinuated in this phrase, the billionaire has form with making eye-catching humanitarian acts. And I believe that this is the thing that probably prompted Elon to respond in the way that he did to the BBC, basically saying that, hey, here's how the media uses the label billionaire. It's basically used to discredit someone. And then there's a series of tweets from people who are saying that his escape pod submarine is not helpful. He's just trying to seek attention. It's a public relations stunt, etc., etc. It's just the thing that I find interesting about this whole debacle, and I think it's a debacle, is that the assumptions that people are making about Elon's intentions. Why did he expend an effort on developing this mini sub? And from my perspective, it seems to me that he developed this capsule as a backup plan for if, in the case that the rescue effort just using regular divers and ropes didn't work. And it's always good to have a backup plan, in my opinion, especially if you're an engineer. I myself am a software engineer, and I feel a lot more confident about systems that have redundancy in them, and I feel a lot better about designs that have backup plans in them. So it seems to me that Elon's effort was genuine, and his intention was to build something that could help if things went south. But the interpretation of Elon's intentions from some people is that he merely did this to showcase how much of a humanitarian he is, therefore generate good public relations, therefore it's good for his business, yada yada yada. Seems to me to be an odd argument to make if Elon at one point questioned whether or not what he was doing had any value, and the people that he asked for an opinion on whether or not this capsule had any value were the people who were actively working on the rescue. So it just seems to me unfair it seems to me to be unfair and uncharitable to assume that Elon's intentions behind this effort on the capsule were only motivated by his desire to make money. That seems to me to be unfair. Now this response from Elon to this Aaron guy, basically saying, hey, I created a bunch of jobs and I'm trying to do something of value here. What have you done? It generated some interesting responses. One of them is from Hank Green, who's basically he said, "Hi, I'd like to remind everyone at my companies that I didn't create your jobs. We all do that together by making good things. I do not feed your children, you do. I am so lucky that you share your talent and skill, and I personally benefit in many ways from your hard work." So a very good sentiment from Hank Green to his employees that work for him. Now this, to me, this is a very interesting response to what Elon said, because Elon's saying, "Hey, look, I created a company and I hired a bunch of people, and therefore I played some part." He says, in his words, he says, "thus supporting 500,000 families." So he has played some part in supporting uh, some families by hiring these people and creating this industry, his SpaceX and Tesla companies. So nowhere here is Elon saying that people aren't feeding their own children, and nowhere is he saying that he didn't. Nowhere is Elon saying that he did not benefit from the talent of his employees. So it's interesting that Hank would respond in this way, because Hank is saying, he's admitting, "I do not feed your children, you do. I'm so lucky to share your talent and skill." As if Elon is not thankful to the talent and skills of his employees. Now, it's nowhere said by Elon anything along those lines. So I think Hank is twisting things slightly here. Now, if we scroll down in this conversation, and this is why I love Elon Musk, you have Hank Green saying, "You can agree with Elon that he is a job creator and also agree he shouldn't have clapped back to a stranger in anger when he is a billionaire with millions of very passionate followers." So Hank is basically saying, "Hey, you've got a lot of responsibility because you have followers. You shouldn't respond to someone with anger." And he's also insinuating he's a billionaire with millions of very passionate followers. So he's insinuating that, if Elon gets angry at someone, if someone on Twitter becomes the focus of Elon's wrath, that person is just gonna get destroyed. They're not gonna be able to continue with life. I mean, that's sort of the insinuation here. And Elon sees this pretty clearly and responds to it simply by saying, "I think the person who attacked me on Twitter will survive somehow." Seems to me to be a perfectly reasonable response. And Hank responds with "oof," which I have no idea what that means. To me, it seems like the argument from Hank's side is you shouldn't respond to someone in anger if you have a lot of power and responsibility like Elon does. But it seems to me that if somebody accuses you, like Aaron did, if somebody accuses you of hoarding resources at the expense of everyone else, and then you're perfectly reasonable to respond with being angry if you know that you're not just hoarding resources for your benefit and at the expense of everyone else, which Elon knows that he's not doing that. So of course, it's like if somebody accused you of being something that you're not, and then you get angry over it, and that seems to me to be a perfectly reasonable thing. Actually, it seems to me to be a very natural, perfectly reasonable response to be angry at someone who's accusing you of being terrible because you're hoarding resources when you know for a fact that you are not doing that. So you respond to this person, and let's say you do have a very rabid fan base that's just going to dogpile this person. I mean, what control does Elon have over who follows him? So it's not like just. It seems to me that Hank is insinuating that if Elon responds angrily towards this person, he's going to invoke the wrath of all of his fanboys. And when the fanboys descend on this poor soul, it's just going to break this guy. Uh, it's just silly. If you're going to go on Twitter and you're going to criticize or basically accuse someone of something that's not true, and that person responds with a little bit of anger behind them, I mean, that seems to be perfectly fair. If you're going to make outrageous claims, expect to be rebutted. But so anyways, that was my long and probably unclear rant or ramble on my frustration at the response to Elon Musk's rescue contribution to the rescue effort of the boys in Thailand who were trapped in the cave. It just seems to me that some people have the most uncharitable view of those who are wealthy, and the view is that if you have wealth, you're going to become twisted and only do things for publicity and not do anything because it's good. And there also seems to be an insinuation, and there also is this element of if you're big and powerful on Twitter and you respond to someone with anger, even if that person has accused you of something that you know is not true, which I believe is perfectly within your right to be angry at someone who accuses you of something that you know is not true. I mean, I'd be pissed, and I would probably respond less gracefully than Elon did to this guy. It's just crazy to me. But so yeah, thanks for bearing through this long, weird video about why I'm frustrated by certain things that appear on Twitter. But I hope you all got something out of it, and have yourselves a good day, a good life, and keep on trucking.